Hey everybody, in this video I want to give you a quick overview of the modular road tool. This is a free tool that I just made available for the community, and as you can see here, it allows you to create your own little road network. So as you can see, this is the sample map that loads as soon as you open the project. You can see that we have regular road segments. In this case, there are 2-lane roads. You can see that we have connectors. In this case, we have 4-way connectors. We also have 3-way connectors. You'll also notice that we have kind of a little overpass here with support columns. You notice that some streets have just a sidewalk, while other ones have kind of a rail. You'll also notice that some of the streets have light poles and some do not. And finally, you'll notice that there are some decals here that you can add to your road. So let's go ahead. If I just click play here, just as a quick demo of what you'll see here, you'll see that I automatically jump into the car and I'm just driving here. And you can see that the road is automatically connected here. So, whoops. If I just drive a little bit around, just to give you an idea of what you're getting here. All right, you see here we have the 3-way connector. And I kind of suck at driving. And then you see that there's a little overpass and joins here at the 4-way connection. Okay. All right, so let's take a quick look at how I created this. So I'm going to a brand new map, just created it, called Level Demo Tutorial. And if we go to the player start here, this is where we're going to start building our road. All right, there we go. So if you go to the MRT folder, go under Blueprints, you'll see that there are several blueprints here. BP Modular Road Tool, that's the main one. You have decals, and you'll have the 3-way connection and the 4-way connection. So go ahead and drag the modular road tool to the landscape. I'm going to put it right there. And the first thing you'll notice, if you just grab the spline and you drag it out, you'll see that a 1-lane road starts appearing. And if you click Alt and you drag, you can duplicate spline points. And what happens here is if you left click on any of the spline points, you can actually move the spline point, and you see that then the road just curves around the spline point. Very simple. And that way, just by cloning the spline points, you can very quickly create a road, as you can see here. Okay. Let's take a quick look at some of the options that we have on the roads here. If you look under Setup, you'll notice that we are right now on Edit mode. And if you disable Edit mode, this is kind of the full road, and you see that automatically we add some sidewalks here. And we go back to Edit mode, the sidewalks go away. And this is a performance measure. When you're building your road and you're adding sidewalks, rails, overpasses, and you build a really large road, it can get really, really taxing on your machine. So this is the reason why we have an edit mode. So as you're driving and you're creating your roads, I would recommend stick to edit mode. And then when you're done laying down your road, you can exit edit mode, and then you can see the final road. There's also a spline only mode. So you can see here, it will only display the spline. And this is again even more performant, right? So if for some reason you're still having issues in edit mode because of the mesh, you can go to spline only mode, and then you can immediately just manipulate the spline. And I can promise you this mode will be performant. Okay, let's go out of this one. And I'm just gonna move the road actor a little bit to the left here. There we go. Okay, so a few of the options here, you'll notice that there are 2 options under number of lanes. You have 1 lane and you have 2 lanes. And I'm going to delete this spline point here just to show you something. So if I wanted to change any of the defaults, for example, from one lane to another lane, The way the road works is there are two default structs. The default's one lane. If you open here, you'll see there are a bunch of options like show the segment, show the left sidewalk, right sidewalk, left rail, right rail, and a lot of different options here, including the meshes, the materials, and the same is true for the defaults for the two lanes. So the way the road works is as you're creating spline points and you're dragging the spline, it'll create the road by automatically creating a segment and assigning the default values to the new segment. What that means is if you change the defaults after you started the spline, the defaults will only apply to the brand new segments. So let's say I want to change this road to 2 lanes. I click on 2 lanes, and now as I drag, you'll notice that we have 2 lanes. And this applies for pretty much any setting on your road. So let's say that now we have 2 lanes. If I go to the defaults 2 lanes and I say I want to add rails, as soon as I start dragging, oops, let me exit edit mode, you'll notice that this segment, the original segment, would use the 1 lane defaults. Then this segment here used the 2 lane defaults, and this little segment here used the modified 2 lane defaults that I just created because I modified the settings. So you can use this to your advantage because you can start your road with a specific mesh combination or material, and then you can switch midway. So let's say you're going from a city to a countryside road, or you're going from a 2-lane road to a 1-lane road. There's a lot of flexibility there. And as you're creating your road, you'll notice that our road segments here, and if I open here, you'll notice that we have 27 segments. And the segments are the green numbers that you see here, and the blue numbers are the spline points. Right, so if you wanted to make a change to one of the segments, say segment 2, you would know that in this case, segment 2 is right here, and you can actually change, let's say show segment. You can hide the segment, for example, or in this case, you didn't want the sidewalks, you can just take out the sidewalks here, and you'll notice that it automatically populates. So let's say that we want it on segment number 3, we want to do the same thing. Take out the sidewalks, and you see that you have the option of changing any of the settings on a per segment basis, right? But what happened if you change your mind? If you say, no, actually, I want the entire road to have brand new defaults. And that's when you use the reset defaults boolean here. So reset defaults will basically recreate the entire spline with the latest defaults based on your number of lanes. So right now we have 2 lanes, and the defaults for 2 lanes include the left and right rail. So if I click on reset defaults and I uncheck it again, the entire road is now recreated with the brand new defaults. So there's always a way that you can go back. You don't have to recreate your road. Or if I wanted to go back to 1 lane and reset the defaults again, the entire road will be again 1 lane. Okay. Let's delete this and start over. Just easier to show. Let's say I wanted 2 lanes. I'm gonna just keep going here with the 2 lanes. The next option is looking at adding support. So the road automatically, I'm going to go ahead and add a few spline points here just to show you. There you go. The road automatically does a line trace to the floor from every spline point if you have add support enabled. And if it is longer the distance than a specific default, it'll automatically add a support. So if you go out of edit mode, you'll notice that the road automatically added supports on each individual spline point. So this is different than the individual segments. The road mesh is created on a per segment basis, but the supports are only available on the spline points. And the reason for that is because you can move your supports by moving the spline point, right? So that gives you a lot of flexibility, because at that point you can decide where your support goes. In case you have a road that's coming underneath, right, you may want to adjust the support. There's also the option, so if I uncheck add support, you'll notice obviously there's no support. There's also the option of adding support on the very first spline point, which in this case there's no reason to, or on the end spline point. And if you just click here, you'll notice that it adds it here. And the reason why this wouldn't be there by default is because maybe the end point you want to bring the road down, for example, like this. Then in that case you wouldn't want a support at the end of the spline point. You'll also notice that the supports go and clip the road or the landscape, and that is because of this number here. Support floor offset is about 10 units. If you make this 0, it'll align perfectly with the floor. But the reason I have a default of an additional 10 units is because if you have supports on a slope, you may have a part of the support kind of hanging in the air. So it's always good to have the support clip a little bit in the ground, just to make sure that if you're on a slope, the support will still match, right? And you can change this number, right? If I make this -20, obviously it's actually going to be negative 20 units away from the floor, or positive 20 units into the floor. Okay. The next option would be to use a custom mesh. I'm kind of going down here. Use custom mesh. If you just enable this, by default, the row will automatically add the light poles here. But this is just a custom mesh that you can edit. So if you go down, all the way down to the setup custom mesh, you'll notice a few things. You'll notice that there is a material for index 0 and 1. There's a spacing option, and there's 2 booleans between adding a custom mesh on the right hand side or a custom mesh on the left hand side. The custom mesh is added in a separate pass, and you can specify the actual spacing, right? So by default it's 1500. You can make it 500, for example, and it'll add the custom mesh much more often. Or you can make this, I don't know, 2000, for example, much more sporadic, and it'll automatically add the custom mesh at that individual interval. Now, if you want to change the custom mesh, you would go to the defaults here. So in this case, the 2-lane defaults, if you open here and you go all the way down, you'll notice that we have a custom mesh right and a custom mesh left static meshes. So you don't have to have the light pole, obviously. This is just the default. You can change it to a different model of a light pole, or you can put cones or barriers, whatever you want. And the left and hand right side can be different meshes, by the way. And this is also the case for 1 lane, right? So you can have for 1 lane different custom meshes, and for a 2-lane road, its own custom meshes. Okay. All right. I'm not going to go through all of this, otherwise the video will be too long, but here's another use case. Let's say that you want support on only a few of the spline points, right? So maybe you have a spline point here, that you have it here because you need it to curve the road in a specific way, right? But you don't want a support in this spline point, right? So by default, every single spline point that is far from the floor will have a support. So the way you do this is you come down here to the utilities and you click on Build Support Map, and this will automatically create a map of all of the supports, and you can see here it automatically populated, has 12 elements, of all of the spline points with a little boolean here. So then what you would do is you would come here and say, okay, this spline point is number 5, right? I don't want to support on number 5. So you would come here to number 5 and you would uncheck this boolean, and you'll notice that it automatically went away. So again, I'm trying to give you as much control as possible. Let's do it for number 6 as well. And you can see there that the supports for 5 and 6 go away, right? So the key here is giving you as much control as possible so you can create the road that you want. Okay, let's go back to edit mode here just to make it a little bit easier. If we keep going down, I'm not going to go through all of these different settings here, but I want to take a look at some of the utilities here. So the first utility besides build support is align to the floor. And this is as simple as it sounds, right? If you click here, it'll automatically do a trace on every single spline point and try to align itself to the floor. And that doesn't have to be just a landscape. It can be pretty much anything, any static mesh. You also have an option here saying flatten all points. And you'll see what happens, right? So if we click right now on align to floor, looks like nothing happened, right? And the reason for that is, well, let me just show you just to make it a little bit easier, right? So if we just click align to floor, notice that these two spline points actually align to the floor, but these ones here did not. And the reason for that is because the default is if you consciously make your spline points tall, I'm assuming that you did it because you want the supports to appear, right? Click on update road and you'll automatically get the road updated. So this is a way of making sure that you don't destroy your supports, right? So if you just wanted to align part of the road and it's just right there on the floor, you can just click on align to floor. However, if you come here and say flatten all points, go ahead back in edit mode, and you click on align to floor, all of the spline points align to the floor. And then you can come back here and click on update road, and the entire road is now aligned to the floor. Okay, let's go ahead and delete that again. And I'm going to make this 2 lanes again. Oops. Now, just creating some spline points here. Okay. That's good enough. So the next utility is align landscape. And if you just click on here, you'll notice that there's an error. Landscape actor not found. So you need to, before you do this, go down to the landscape section, click on the eyedropper, select your landscape, and you'll have a few options here. You can, right now, by default, it'll raise the landscape to meet the road, or it'll lower the landscape to meet the road. And it'll have a starting width and an end width for the spline, and a start and an end fall off. So if I'm just going to put this down just to demonstrate for the sake of demonstration here. So you'll see, there we go, like this one. In this case, the road goes underneath and then above. If I come back here and click on align landscape, you'll see that the landscape lowered here and then raised to meet the road. And then if I go out of edit mode, then you'll see the road. All right, can barely make it up there. Okay, cool. The next option is attach road to point. So let's create a brand new road. And again, let's make this 2 lanes. let's say that I wanted to add this road to another road. Say that this road I wanted to attach to this road here. So the way you would do it is from this road you would select the other road, and you have to specify the connection point, and the connection point is the spline point. So if you come here, you'll notice that if I want to attach it to the end, the connection point is 10. So you click 10, and then you say attach road to point. And you'll notice now that the road automatically moved here. So this is an easy way of, there you go, adding road segments. You don't necessarily have to do one segment as one spline. You can always come back and add more roads. So in this case, need to kind of align it like that. There you go. And then if I come here and I disable edit mode, you'll notice that it's pretty seamless. And of course, because there you go. Because this is so high, you'll notice that now we have the landscape, and then the second row starts exactly here, and then it has its support based on the settings. Okay. The next is attach end to point. So this is again similar. So let's say I'm going to again drop another road, 2 lanes here. I'm going to put it up. And let's say, actually bring it down. Trying to align it as best as I can here. Okay. Let's say that I wanted to align the end spline point to a specific point on another road. Then I would do it the same way. I would come here and click on road, click here, and then I want to attach this road to spline point number 5. And then you would come here and say, oops, attach end to point. Notice that now the spline point moves automatically to this spline point, and you can come up here and click on update road, and it'll automatically update. And if you're having trouble because it's not perfectly rotated, one way is to create a separate spline point a little farther and kind of move it a little bit. And as you're rotating, you'll notice that now you're trying to match the spline point there. Well, I'm not going to waste too much time, but you get the point. You can kind of move your road here to try to match that road. Okay. Let's see next. Attach to connector. So we're going to skip this for now, and because we're going to talk about this when we're talking about connectors. Clone road. Another interesting one. So let's say that you wanted to clone a road, right? You spend a lot of time making your road really nice, right? Your curves, and you wanted to clone this road. One way of doing it would be to grab your road, a brand new road. Again, let's make it 2 lanes. And for some reason here, you have to kind of manually modify the road first. And I don't know why that happens, but it does. And then from here, you would go into other road, click on the road you want to clone, select it, and simply click on clone road. And notice now that if I try to erase this, the road is perfectly cloned. If I go out of edit mode, it's the exact same road. And this is useful if you want to create 2 separate rows that are kind of next to each other, right? So if you wanted to have 2 lanes going one way, 2 lanes going the other way, you would use the clone road tool, and that's how you would do it. All right. Spawn end mesh. I'm not going to show you that, but basically it'll spawn a static mesh at the end of your road. And if you come down to end mesh, you can basically select any static mesh and it'll automatically spawn it at the end. So if you want to add your own connector or anything specific, maybe your own special mesh for the road, you can add it here. You click on that utility and it'll automatically add it to the end. Spawn end actor is the exact same concept, but in this case it'll spawn a blueprint actor at the end of the road. And by default, it has himself, Modular Road Tool. So if you wanted to add another road segment, a very quick way, instead of doing it the way I just showed you earlier, would be to simply say spawn end actor. And you'll notice that now we have another road here. And in this case, it's only one lane, but if I wanted to, I can go by 2 lanes, reset defaults, and you can see that it adds it, right? And then I come to this new road, and I click on spawn end actor, and the exact same thing happens, right? So this is, again, a very easy way of spawning new road segments. There you go. So as you can see, very quickly I was able to spawn 2 new road segments here. All right, and finally, spawn connector. And these are the connectors that you saw earlier. So let's take a quick look at the different connectors that we have. We have a 3-way connector, and this is exactly what it sounds like. You have one road come from here, and then another road come almost like in a T shape through here. And a 4-way connector is exactly what it sounds like. It's basically 2 roads intersecting, or 4 roads intersecting into this piece here. And the connectors work the same way. There are 2 separate blueprints, and you'll notice that you have some text here saying connection 1, connection 3, connection 2. In this case has 1, 2, 3, and 4. And these are specific points that are there so you can exactly connect your road, right? So before we do that, let's just take a quick look at some of the options that we have for all of the connectors as well. So the connectors, just like the roads, have a few options here. You have number of lanes. So in this case, you have 1 lane or 2 lanes, and it'll automatically resize and change the material for 1 or 2 lanes. You have standard materials, and this is the material for 1 lane or 2 lanes, and you have a sidewalk material, which you can see here. You have a map that talks about the different corners. So if you enable it, you'll see here that automatically you're adding a sidewalk mesh. And the reason for that is because if you have a road that comes here itself with a sidewalk, you kind of want that rounded corner there. But if you don't have a road with sidewalks, then you obviously have the option of taking that out. And notice that each individual corner is a separate boolean here. So maybe a road here doesn't have, for example, a road here doesn't have sidewalks, so you take those away. And a road here does have sidewalks, and you can add them here. So you have a lot of control as to how you want to display your connector. You also have a few utilities. The first one is align landscape, and it's just like that sounds, right? So if I go back to, let's just leave it for 1 lane now, and I say align landscape, I can click and select the landscape and align it, and you'll notice that the landscape, just like the road, rises up to accommodate the connector here. If I go to 2 lanes and I click on align landscape, you'll notice that some of that landscape is still kind of out, and the reason for that is because the blueprint is using this spline to control the landscape. So what you need to do is you need to resize these 2 spline points. This is the beginning and this is the end, and come here into start with and end with and increase this. Let's make this 800 and 800. And then if you go back and click align landscape, now you notice that it actually encapsulates the entire connector, right? These options are the exact same as for the 3 connector. You also have a socket, and you have a drop down for all of the different sockets, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and you can spawn a road from a specific socket. So if you click on spawn single road on socket 1, you'll notice that the road is here, and as soon as you start dragging, it automatically knows that it is a 2-lane road because this connector is in a 2-lane state. And that's one way of doing it. I'm going to delete that. Or if you wanted to have 4 rows automatically come out of it, you can just say spawn all rows, and all of the connectors will immediately, spawn the rows. So you have a few options on how you can build your network of roads. You can, if you wanted to, first set the intersections and then spawn the rows, and then you can connect them that way, or you can do it the other way around. And if I go here and take out the edit mode, you'll notice that because the default for the roads has a sidewalk, having the sidewalks here makes it look neat, right? Makes it continue. Okay. Now, if we want to see the 3-way connector, I'm not going to take too much time here. The only difference here is that there's an additional 4th option that is not here on the 4-way road. So if you have the 3 corners and the 3, you see here that is kind of a one continuous one, you have the ability to add a rail. And the reason for that is, let me just show you. Spawn all roads. And in this case, it's only just one lane, right? So let's say that for these 2 roads, the default is that I want a left rail, or both left and right rail. And I come here and I say reset defaults, and I exit edit mode. Notice that now there is a gap there. So you can come to the connector and select add rail, and it'll add the rail, basically completing the road. Let's go ahead and add it here as well. There you go. All right, so those are the connectors, and what are the different things you can do, right? So if you're in a road, like in this case, you can now go under connectors, and you can select a connector type, 3-way or 4-way. In this case, let's make it 4-way. And based on this drop down here, if you click on spawn connector, it'll automatically spawn a connector. And this, the rotation here is kind of messed up, but it'll automatically spawn a connector here of the same width and of the same type. Right, if I delete this, oops, you can also come back here and say, no, I want a 3-way connector, and then you can spawn a 3-way connector. And you can see that it kind of aligns it. And then from there, you can have connector 2 and connector 3. And that way you can build your road. The other useful thing is if you have a road, I'm going to delete this one here, you can attach it to a connector. Going to add a few spline points here. Let's say that this is a road somewhere else on your level, and you wanted it to attach to this connector here. What you can do is you come to your road, select your connector, you specify the connector type. This is a 4-way connector, and you specify the connector name, connection 3. And when you select that option, you can come up here, and now you can say attach to connector. And notice that the last spline point automatically attaches to connector 3 from this reference. Then you can go up and click on update road, and the road will automatically update. And again, my recommendation will be to add a spline point somewhere closer to this that you can then kind of rotate to make sure that you match the road. And if I go out of edit mode, you'll see that now everything is connected. All right, so we looked at some of the basic options of the road. You can change a lot of the options on a per segment basis. We talked about how to add or remove segments. We looked at all of the different utilities here. We looked at the 3-way connector and the 4-way connector. And now I want to talk to you about some of the materials of the road. So let's go ahead and create a brand new road here. And again, just going to make it a 2-lane road. And if you come here, you'll notice that there are some materials that are on the default. So you can come to defaults 2-lane, and the default material of the road is called pavement material MR2 standard. If you click on the little eyeglass here, you can open the material and you can see that there are several options here for your material. So you can change the base color. So you can come here and change the base color. So let's say that you wanted the road to be darker. You can change it, or lighter. Or obviously you can change, make it purple, make it red, yellow. Maybe you're making some kind of futuristic game. But by and large, you probably want to keep it kind of white and change the values here. I'm going to cancel that. You can change the road texture. Maybe you want to import your own texture, and you can change it here. The UV scaling, you can change it, right? So right now it's 3. You can make it 2, and you'll notice that it looks a little bit more rough, or 1, very rough, or maybe you can make it like 5, super fine detail, right? The default is 3. You can change the line colors, so you have a center line color of yellow. You can change that to, let's say, white, or you can change it to pretty much any color you like, right? I'm going to cancel that out. You can also have the option for the left line. Again, you can change it to whatever you want, or the right line. Make it whatever you want. There are also line textures, and you also have line visibility. So let's say you didn't want the center line. You can come here to line visibility and make it a 0, and the line would actually go away. Okay. There are also some options for weather here. So this is really neat. So if you wanted to come here and say that it was actually rainy, you could increase the rain amount, let's say to 0.8, and you'll notice that the road automatically gets more reflective, looks more like it's damp and a little bit darker, right? So your road in this case is wet, or you can add snow, maybe 0.5, and you'll notice that now the road is a little snowy. You can increase the coverage. Notice that it's only appearing on the top of the road. So let's increase the coverage to, I don't know, 0.7. You'll notice that now the coverage goes down a little bit more, or maybe 100% coverage covers everything here. And you can change the roughness of the regular road, which I'm not going to play with here. Cool. So those are the options for the road. You have similar options for the connectors as far as the weather, the color of the lines, whether you want to display certain lines. I'm not going to go over it, that stuff in this video because again it'll take too long, but the same options would apply. So if you come here to your road, you can change the material for the sidewalk, you can change the material for the rails, you can change the meshes, and you can change the segment start width, end width, the thickness, and even the roll, right? In case sometimes you want to add a roll specifically to a segment of the road. All right, and the last thing I want to show you is the decals. So let's say that I wanted to spawn a, let's just make a three-way connector, spawn connector. So you can see it's here. I am going to add on the connector the corners, because this by default will have the corners. And I want to add some decals. So go back to blueprints, BP apply decals, and drop it in here. And it looks kind of crappy here, and that's because you have to select your decal material. So if you open it here and just type decal, you'll notice that I have a bunch of different ones by default. So let's just go with stop square, and you'll see that it's just a big old square. So let's rotate the actor 90 degrees, and this actor is basically a spline, and it'll add the decal to every single spline point. And you have options here about the decal scale. So let's make this, I don't know, 0.5, and you'll notice that now the decal is there. And maybe this is 0.8. That's 0.3 or 0.4. There we go. And now what you can do is you can create new spline points, and you'll notice that the decal is now created. I'll just move this here a little bit more. And that's how you would add decals. So if I wanted to duplicate this, rotate the spline by about 90, come down here. Now I have to rotate each individual decal, which is here, decal rotation. So let's make it 90, 90, 90, and 90. And now you can duplicate this and put it right here. And now, if I click play, you'll notice that now I have a 2-lane road with the stop decals here and the 3-way decal here. All right, so hopefully I gave you an overview of what you can do with the tool. My recommendation is look at the different maps that I've added. Let me just quickly show you. I added 2 additional maps, one with snow and one with rain, just to showcase what happens when you combine all of the materials. But I will start these maps to see how I connected the roads and how I use the different connectors. And if I click play here, you'll see that this looks more like a snowy terrain. I've added the snow, the same snow amount, to the road meshes, to the road material, to the sidewalk material, to the custom mesh material, which is the light bulb in this case, and even the landscape material has a snow checkbox. So you can add snow to the landscape material, and you can see here that it looks pretty snowy. And lastly, before I go, let's open the rain demo. You can see the same thing in this demo. All I did was select the materials for the roads and the endpoints and everything, and I specified a rain amount. And you can see here in this case I made it a night scene, but you can see that the road here looks pretty wet. Same thing for the connectors, same thing for the sidewalks, same thing for the rails. So if you look here on the rails on the left hand side, the concrete rails, they look wet. You can see there. So this was accomplished literally in just a couple of minutes by changing the material parameters. So hopefully you like the project. I really happy to be able to share it. So let me know what you think. Is there anything else that you think will be useful to add? You know, do let me know if there are any feature requests or anything, any issues that you find. I'm not promising you that it's going to be completely bug free. So if you find anything, do let me know. And yeah, I'm really happy that I can finally share this with the community. Yeah, thank you guys so much, and I'll see you in the next video.